Hello, guys, and welcome to another community call. This is December 13, almost nearing the end of the year. So I guess hopefully you are not too tired. So let me get to the point. We have a bunch of different things now. I invited especially JB today so he can give us some update about the development of Kleros 2.0. So maybe we can start with that if you want, JB. That so people get an update of how the testnet is going and what we can expect for the future.
Yeah. So hi everyone. So on the V2 front, so the current testnet actually is very much beyond its expected. It should be dead already, basically. So it was expected to be retired after DevConnect in Istanbul. That's what Arbitrum had announced, and somehow it's still working. So now the next step is to deploy to Sepolia. That's going to be the third testnet for Kleros V2. And instead of rushing into this deployment, we wanted to have a number of important changes already to be deployed. So that's the reason why we've been a bit delayed for this migration to Sepolia. So we've had like 3, I would say, large code changes that were merged in the past 10 days. They have to do with reducing the complexity of the code, improving the UX. And what else? What else did we do? It's mostly it. There's of course some ongoing work on the front end. That's progressing in parallel. But yeah, so the deployment to Sepolia is imminent. I've actually just deployed the Pinakion V2 on Sepolia just earlier today. So the rest of the contracts will follow. So then the arbitrator will be running. Then in addition to that, we are working on the first arbitrable DApp that will be natively compatible with Kleros V2. That's going to be the escrow. And initially we thought that we would just take what we had for the current escrow and just modify the interfaces a little bit and make it work with the V2 interfaces. And actually, it turns out that Plinio already had done a lot of work on a new design, a new user experience, and that would help us support new use cases. So we ended up starting again from scratch with a completely new escrow V2, which is, well, it's actually I can share a link. It's non-functional, but it gives a good idea of what we are doing right now.
Yeah, that would be cool, so people can see it. Let me, in the meantime, I can say, building an escrow sounds like easy, but it's super hard because it's not just about the speed resolution of Kleros. It's about all of the instances that happen before sending the case to Kleros if it's actually sent, because sometimes there is a settlement period and then giving users some time to make a proposal of settlement and the other party to say no and to say yes. And so there is a lot of very complex mechanisms, involved. And so all that involves, smart contract complexity and logics and all that. So it's harder than it seems.
Yeah. On the front end, actually, Marino and Aleš have been moving really quickly with this. They were able to leverage some of the UI components and the design system that was already implemented for V2. And hopefully we can keep on doing this for the other apps. And yes, so on the side, there's also some experiments. We restarted the discussion with Shutter Network, which is they would provide us with a solution for hidden votes that would improve the user experience by auto-revealing the votes of the jurors instead of requiring an additional step. And that if that works as expected, that we would probably end up enabling the hidden votes by default on every court. And
maybe we can give some context about this. So, as you know, for commit and reveal courts, so there is a not great user experience in the sense that you have to first go to the court, commit your vote, and then at the reveal period, reveal the vote. So if you forget to reveal the vote at the right time, so you lose money. So we have been in touch with Shutter, I think for like, I don't know, William, how long have we been in touch with them?
So the first time we talked about it publicly was at ECC 2021, but I was already sort of privately in touch with them before that. So it's been a while.
Yeah. So as JB said, so this would greatly improve the experience of jurors because the votes can like self-reveal. I mean, maybe William, you can explain how this is possible from a cryptographic perspective, if it's easy for people to understand, basically.
I mean, it's not that hard. Like, so basically, there's this fundamental problem of information flow, and of like as your vote is being, you're casting your committed vote. Like a priori, you're the only person that knows the information about what the actual vote is. Like that, like it should an external third, like an external observer, shouldn't be able to extract that information. Otherwise, you have like a security problem. But then, like, how can your vote auto reveal itself without you taking an action? And the solution to this is that, like, a naive thing you could do would be to give your vote to somebody else and tell them to reveal it for you. So, like, some trusted third party. But that's not great because then you have some, like, trusted third party. If they're doing this for lots of people, that could be decentralization, that they have some privileged access to, like, early knowledge about the votes. So what you can do with Shutter is you can basically, like, give that information to a group of third parties. They can only reassemble the information if they all work together. So they use what's called threshold encryption. It's similar to, like, I was going to say it's like similar to like threshold and like cryptography, but maybe that's not so helpful to our listeners. But like, if it uses Shamir secret sharing, some people might be familiar with that.
I know like that because of the wallets, when you have to split and you can, if people get to one of your third of your parts, then they don't have information about the others, right?
Right. So, like, it's sort of like broadly, in threshold signatures and threshold encryption, you have these ideas of like wanting to be able to reconstruct like shared things out of like pieces where you need like, N out of M pieces. And then the idea is that, like the threshold keykeepers have encrypted knowledge of my vote, but only like N out of M of them working together can reveal that. And then Shutter has its own sort of internal systems to try to like, like organize them in such a way that they're not going to collude with each other. And then like at the end of the period, they'll reveal, but not before that. And there's been some like preliminary talks, like conceivably you could use Kleros itself to like slash, malicious keykeepers that like reveal too early or collude or something. But that's the idea. Like your vote is encrypted and given to like this like cloud of parties that then reveal it collectively when the time comes.
Cool. So we ask for people who lots of people listen to the recording and they maybe not everyone is an expert in Kleros. So we get very often this objection to Kleros and to sharing points. If people can see what other people voted through like Kleros board, for example. So why can't they just vote just copy the vote and then get the reward, right? So the answer to this is commit and reveal, but it's bad user experience. So if we can solve the user experience, then imagine William having all of the cores of Kleros by default commit and reveal or just secret voting. How would this affect the mechanism?
I mean, it would be strictly better. The other answer is the appeal process, and that sure, you can see the votes of the people in the ground, but if there's the potential for an appeal, different voters in the subsequent round could change their mind, and the way the incentives work, you're actually it's that much better for you to be the minority voice to disagree with people in your round. So if you see someone who's voting for Bob and you think Bob is really not the right answer and it will lose in an appeal, that makes it more likely that Bob will win your round. But it makes your reward that much higher if you are ultimately right. So the idea is that these incentives are sort of cancel each other out and you should still be incentivized to vote the honest answer, Alice or something. So I recommend people see my talk at ECC 2021 where I talk about these issues in great detail on information flow and anti-privilegation in Kleros. The appeal process is a current sort of partial solution to this. Having commit and reveal universally would be in addition to the appeal process, that much better. There are still issues, even with that, in that if you have the opportunity for everyone to hide their vote, that doesn't mean people won't reveal their vote early anyway. And then you get into questions how do we incentivize people to not reveal their vote early, and can you penalize that? So there are lots of aspects to this question, but having commit reveal with good UX would be a strict improvement.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you to go into the user behavior curve because it would be too long of a detour. So let's just go back to JB, and now people understand why this conversation with Shatter are important. Yeah, JB, please.
Yeah, I'm also very curious to see how it's going to affect the dynamics during the disputes and not knowing what other people are voting, how it's going to affect the arguments. And other than that, another effort that's happening in parallel, it's on the bridging side. So we have our bridge VIA, which has taken a bit of a step back, hasn't really progressed as much as before in the past few months. But the interesting thing is that there's been this effort in the industry to standardize and provide a more abstraction. So basically to make bridging more resilient and more vendor agnostic. So ideally, as an application developer, I would not have to commit to a particular bridge vendor implementation, and I could maybe by governance or at runtime decide to rely on different underlying bridges and with different security guarantees. And Hashi has this working group which is improving this. They are also very keen to have VIA integrated with this Hashi bridge aggregator, and yeah, we are in discussion with this, and actually maybe in the end for the cross chain mechanism for Kleros V2 maybe will not be directly VIA, but perhaps integrated with Hashi instead of VIA. We'll see.
JB, for the people who were actively testing the testnet, so after the new deployment, what is going to change? What they need to do? Stake again? Explain a bit about that.
Yeah, so it's going to be a completely fresh deployment. It's a different network, so even the Pinakion token is a different one. We will have a faucet with a button integrated in the front end, like before. So you can claim, I forgot, maybe 10,000 PNK from that front end, and yeah, you can stake it, and yeah, everything is going to restart from scratch. We are going to create some disputes, and maybe not too often, because just in case if people miss their votes, they get unstaked, and it's probably not great. I highly recommend that the jurors, I mean the stakers, subscribe to the Hermes bots directly from Telegram, not from the front end, but from Telegram directly. Until that's what we are going to work on next, is the notification by email. Ideally, we would just save your maybe Telegram username in the front end and then send you notifications to your Telegram. But actually, Telegram does not allow us to do this. The interactions with the bot have to be initiated from the Telegram client. So yeah, there are other more sophisticated ways to do it, but for now, the best way to be notified of juror duty is to subscribe directly in the Hermes bot, which is I can share it again. This guy. And yeah, I think that's it for the next few weeks, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you, JB. And we are also seeing potential auditors for the smart contract of B2. So a bunch of background work also there. Okay, let's go to William now.
Yeah. So we have this long promised blog article that I've been talking about for several weeks on SPTs. It will come out as soon as our graphic designer does all the images on that. So I look forward to all reading that and giving me comments. But beyond that, like, as you'll eventually see in this blog article, there are lots of open research questions that are still remain about SPTs and how they could be involved in juror selection. So I'm continuing to think about those. I'm also thinking a lot about how one can take advantage of the modular structure of the court to use voting systems and incentive systems that are drawn from the academic field of peer prediction in early rounds of disputes that are maybe like less resistant to attacks. But then you depend on the appeal system. So if you have an attack, you appeal to a more robust mechanism like the ones we described in the yellow paper. Some of these peer prediction mechanisms can be better at sort of bringing out people to vote their true observation, even in like cases where there's a really strong default. Maybe you're in like a freelancer small business owner dispute, and like the freelancer wins like 98% of the time. You might be incentivized to, in some incentive systems, you might think, well, maybe like the small business owner looks like they have a point in this case, but the freelancer just wins so often, I should vote for them just because it seems like a conservative thing to do. And if you have the right incentives, you can sort of avoid these effects and have people vote for the small business owner, if they think that's their true observation. Unfortunately, a lot of the systems that do that have attack resistance problems, but because of the new version of the court is going to be modular, you can maybe do that in the first round, and then when you appeal, you go to something more robust. So I'm thinking about how we can fit in some of these systems from the existing literature into kind of the like structure we have around dispute kits in V2.
Yeah, so for more context, so as you know, the current version of Kleros was launched in 2019, and so it was a time where we didn't have identity protocols. So the only way to prevent, civil attack was through token voting. This, of course, is how Kleros works now, and it's still going to be the case in the future. But the launch of identity protocols like Proof of Humanity and others enable different mechanisms, not just for Kleros. It enables voting mechanisms like quadratic voting, for example. In the case of Kleros, this addresses some of the very important concerns that a lot of people have, especially people who come to Kleros from the more like mainstream world of lawyers about how do you know that the guy you are picking from the for the juror doesn't have a conflict of interest with the parties, which is not one of the assumptions in the Kleros as it exists now, because anyone can be party and juror at the same time. And also, how do you know that this person has the right skills to resolve the case that is at hand? So, well, the good thing is that now we have protocols for identity, and then we also have this idea brought by Vitalik and Glenn Weil and Pooja Olaver on this paper about soul-bound tokens, and soul-bound tokens can be used for different things. What is interesting for us is that you can use a soul-bound token to attest skills of a person. Like, so now you have one person that controls one account, and this person, you can ask this person to go to some education course, and then after they complete the course, they get a SVT diploma, let's say. And also, sometimes people want jurors to only be drawn from their community. For example, to take a real world example, in US court cases, only can be drawn as jurors American citizens, basically, or residents. So this is a case in Kleros. Some people would want to only have jurors coming from their community, and this is also something you can do with maybe with an SVT. So this will largely increase the flexibility of the protocol to address a bunch of more use cases, especially those that we have been targeting lately, consumer claims that have like very high volume and lower value. And this is why also the deployment of V2 in Arbitrum, the fact that it's way, way cheaper than the current version, even if there is a version in Gnosis, but the main one is in the Ethereum mainnet. So we'll enable more use cases and will bring more cases to the court. So this is a bit of an overview of V2. Let me see if we want to have some update from maybe Marcos. Are you there from business development?
Yep, we have some updates from the business development team. The first one is very related to what you were saying about consumers and those kind of disputes. Tomorrow, Lemon is going to do maybe the first official announcement of the integration they are doing with us. Why is the first one? Because they are just going to do the announcement in their Discord and just in a few social media, because we want to go step by step here, because they are a monster for us. And if they start announcing this everywhere, we could receive too many disputes to what we are ready. So yeah, tomorrow is going to be the first official announcement. Then another update about Otoko. There is a company assembly service for full on-chain DAOs, and they are going to integrate the Kleros Zodiac module into their onboarding flow. And then another update about Stakewise, where one of Alex, one of the guys from the BD team, has started a discussion with them to use Kleros as an arbitrator into their Zodiac priority setup. And well, that's all from the BD side this week.
Yeah, I think Alex was there, so maybe he wants to comment a bit more about Zodiac and all that.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, it's very interesting. So we are at Kleros, when we think about integrating with DAOs, we are at really all like the maturity cycle of DAOs. So definitely we will target, and we have strong discussion with protocol like Otoko mentioned by Marcos, that are here like basically to help very young DAOs when they are created, basically to use our Zodiac module that allows them to decentralize from the start and don't rely or rely on multisig, but like using our module to have the security of Kleros included in it. And in terms of very early stage of DAO's maturity, I can also add that we recently have we are referenced as a partner for Cryptosphere Accelerator. Basically, that's an accelerator of a student association in France that is gathering basically all the biggest top engineering school and university. So you will find a business school like ESSEC, for instance. You will find a university like Sorbonne, if you have heard about it, and the engineering school like Télécom Sud Paris, or like ENSAE, or Centrale Marseille, for instance. So basically, we are referenced there, and all the students that want to use some DAO toolings in their project, basically, they could reach me, basically, and we can help them to set up this for their project. So that's for the early stage, really, and the young DAOs. But it's also interesting noting that we have some mature DAO that are using reality, like the one mentioned by Marcos, that could be interested in integrating our arbitrator, Kleros. And we are also finding that's the very interesting part, some DAOs that are integrating with us already without reaching us. So yes, we are still working on some technical details with them, but it's really interesting to see Kleros used more and more as a standard, basically. Like people are integrating without reaching us, and I mean that's great for the project, but we are also here to help. So yeah, if you want to integrate Kleros at some point, just reach us. For the setup, it will be easier to have us in the loop. So yeah, feel free to reach me for anything related to DAOs.
Yeah, I mean, let me just add something about this. I mean, do get in touch with us, because now we are getting more and more often like people who have like disputes with like service providers, like kind of, you know, Alice and Bob type of software development dispute or similar, that they sign a contract and then they put a Kleros, I mean, clause of arbitration, and then if no dispute happens, all good. We don't find out about that, but so in some cases, dispute happens, and so they come to us and they, okay, how do we enforce this now? How do we what is the next step? And so it's not very easy in the case of the money, I mean, not being put into an escrow, right? So if we could, I mean, advise people to put money into an escrow, into the escrow app, then it would be much easier for solving their dispute. So if you want to use Kleros, I mean, of course, this is a permissionless protocol, so you can just implement, and that's all. That's okay. But you know, it's better if we can guide you through the intricacies and the complexities of how this works, and also help you to understand what is the right court for your, you know, type of use case and the parameters and all of these things that yeah, we do.
Yes, and to build on that, it's true for like people that put it in some contract, but it's also true even for technical-minded people, basically, that will include in the field of arbitrator a specific contract that is a Kleros contract. But sometimes in our setup we have a different kind of set of contract for different kind of approach. For instance, for 1inch, for instance, for their DAO, there is a specific contract that is really useful and is recommended to use with the Zodiac module. And sometimes some people just go take one contract and paste it in without exactly checking or knowing all the details. So yeah, even if you are technical, yeah, feel free to reach us to have just the perfect setup. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, go to the doctor instead of self-medicating, because self-medicating, can go wrong, and we don't want you to get hurt. So yeah, do come to us before, whenever you want to have some integration with Kleros. We're here to help. Okay. Anything else, Alex?
Well, that's it from my side. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me see, Jean, what do we have for this week?
I think that's it. We still have the incentive program for submissions on our registries. So if you were making submissions, I suggest to check the dashboard because then you can find the most valuable submissions. And about that, we are also submitting some entries that we captured off chain. And there are some data that was not checked. So there's probably a couple of possible disputes. So if you want to review the submissions, there's probably some opportunity to learn on some challenges in this business. And I think that's it from me.
Okay. About me, I'm going to tomorrow be speaking at a joint event that we are organizing with the World Intellectual Property Organization. So, this is a branch of the United Nations that is concerned about disputes and law in the context of IP. So we are exploring together use cases in the world of gaming and esports. So this is going to be tomorrow at 3 p.m. UTC. It's in Spanish, so if you speak Spanish, you can go, and if you don't speak Spanish, you can still go. You will understand less, but it's still open. So it's going to be a quite cool event. There's going to be me. There's going to be Leandro Toscano, who is from the WIPO, and then there's going to be Emilio Hurtado, who is an expert influencer in the world of esports. So he's going to be speaking about, what are the main types of disputes. And this is a use case that we were aware from very early days of the project. And now, as there is more development in the ecosystem of esports and also in Kleros, so this is now going to be feasible very, very soon. So that's why we are exploring. And from the point of view of WIPO, it's also trying to bring solutions to, new breeds of disputes that happen in the digital world. And on Friday, I'm also going to have another speaking engagement at the Architect community, where I'm going to present Kleros 2.0 for an audience of lawyers and arbitrators. And they have been waiting for this for a long time, because they are the ones who are mostly interested in all of these SVT applications that I mentioned before, to prove the skills of jurors and all that. So that's going to be cool. Also open if you want to go there. I think Jean can share the link to sign up. And I guess that's it. That's a lot for end of the year.
I don't remember if we mentioned, but I think there's the fellowship, right?
Oh, the fellowship, right? Yeah, sorry. We started the 7th batch of the fellowship. Actually, super interesting. Well, every year is super interesting, and every year there is different, topics depending on what the fellows want to do and the type of research that we want to foster, depending on what's the context of the year. So this time we have a bunch of very interesting people from Brazil, for example, on how to improve processes of onboarding off-chain cases into Kleros, something similar to what we are doing with Lemon, but in a more scalable way. Then we have other people who are researching how we could use Kleros for exchange disputes, also this time in Singapore. Another one which is super interesting and is super different to what we usually get is a fellow from, I think from Bahrain, and he's researching. He's now currently at the Dubai Climate Conference, and he's researching on how to use Kleros to do some kind of assessment of environmental damage that can be affecting nature by companies, and so you could use Kleros to do this type of assessment and maybe to impose penalties. So this is a bit related to something we discussed in the past, is about carbon credits, and so this is on that side. And this is a person who is a very, very experienced person in this industry, and also he went to Singularity, so he's a guy who is, of course, thinking forward on how these problems need to be solved for, maybe humankind to survive, basically, if you want. And I guess that's it for today. It's already quite long.
Fede, when you said
Yes.
about the carbon credits and humanity to survive, can you share the link to this talk or to this event? I'm interested.
It's not an event. So there is now climate conference happening in Dubai now, right? I think, what is the name? G28 or something like that.
It was COP28. It's just finished.
Yeah. So yeah, he was there. He was there for work, and he's just starting. So he's starting to problematize what he wants to research. I mean, we are just. So he's not trying to do carbon credit, but one of the use cases that we had discussed in the past and that could potentially Kleros could work is, so carbon credits is kind of a quite, I don't want to say obvious, but quite straightforward, at least, market to tokenize, and there's projects trying to do that, and then you end up, in type of disputes of how many carbon credits does a company needs to be awarded based on how much it polluted. So this type of things, and there might be lots of different, disagreements, situations where you would need objective, neutral assessment of how much pollution was done and what was the cost to society and stuff like that. So we have, as you know, been researching a bunch of use cases. I mean, I didn't even get into this rabbit hole because we already discussed enough Kleros 2.0, but one of the things that Kleros 2.0 brings is a better decision system for situations where we want jurors to try to give not like a yes or no answer, but an answer that is more like how much should the settlement be based on the contract. And maybe William, do you want to explain a bit how
actually Fede, I would love to speak with this person because I'm working on a very similar problem space, so this could be a very valuable introduction. I would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely, send me an email and I will make an introduction. No problem. Then maybe William, you can explain this. So a bit, 2 minutes so people.
So you want me to talk about the improvements in V2 about how you can have non-binary answers? Yeah. So right. So I mean, the current problem, you can have in version, in Kleros 1.0, you can have cases that have more than two answers. In fact, almost all cases have all cases have this refuse to arbitrate answer. So basically, you always have at least three answers. But in practice, you don't want to have cases that have sort of practically non-binary answers, where there are more than two options that seem plausible because you could have vote splitting. Like if you have lots of options that are all sort of equally reasonable, you have lots of honest options. There's not one option that's clearly honest. It's definitely going to pull you towards a Schelling point. Then faced with many sort of reasonable settlements, so some escrow dispute or something, you can maybe have your vote form between multiple choices, and if there's one distinguished hostile malicious option or wrong option, that can actually become the Schelling point just because it's distinguished. So in Kleros 2.0, the idea is to have ranked options. So that's at least the sort of main dispute kit that we envision for most cases like this. It's the most robust to various kinds of attacks we've researched over the years. And the idea is that you'll have, however many options, you can rank them from 1 to n. And then we've thought long and hard about like exactly how one should be incentivized for having, maybe you put the right option third, what should your reward be for that? What's the best voting system to convert that into an answer, and to do that in like attack resistant ways.
Yeah, and so one of the applications that we have been working on this is like insurance, for example. Like there's a car crash and there's some personal injury, and there's a disagreement on what should be the settlement or compensation to the policyholder that got the injury. And so it's not just 100 or 0. It's sometimes it's like you could get different. You want jurors to provide a estimate of what they want, what they think should be the right amount of compensation. So that use case from insurance, that kind of the same logic to do some valuation on how much carbon credits should be awarded to a company, and there's other also use cases. I mean, lots of use cases are about this, because everything that requires some valuation of an IP, for example, this is also one of those use cases. I don't want to get into that now because it's going to take forever. It's quite complex, and that's why when we are researching that. But yeah, I mean, so Mars, please send me an email and I will introduce you to this person. No problem at all.
Fede, I will just give you a very quick tip in life. If something takes 1 minute, just send me the details straight away. You are on Telegram, ping me the details. There is no need to, emails, how much time it will take me to send an email. Just to do this straight away, 10 seconds.
If you prefer, I just was,
yes.
I was going to make an introduction for you, so to get your intro, but if you prefer
this way, I see. Like a warm introduction email. Okay, I get it. I understand your point. No worries. I see your point, and I'm sorry for, giving shitty advice, because sometimes this is my philosophy in life. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it straight away. There's a phrase in English, easier said than done. But sometimes done is easier than said, and I'm sorry for this little mistake.
Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry. It's okay. Okay. Well, I guess that's it for today. That's pretty packed call. Yeah. So, well, guys, thank you very much for coming, and see you next week. Bye bye.
Ciao. Bye bye.
Everybody.